And with that, we conclude this new segment of the most beautiful people around the world. Notice how you are not on the list? Thanks for watching. Hey Siri, am I pretty?
You're fine.
No, I mean like by societal standards. Am I pretty?
The fact that you are asking an AI program that question is honestly very worrying, and maybe something you want.
Okay, no, I got it. You don't need to lecture me, I understand. Maybe it's a little weird to seek the validation of an AI, especially since Siri can only express what Siri has been coded to be able to express, which is usually going to be very generic information or possibly the biases that her developers had and did not realize that they had written into the code themselves. This problem is actually a very common one in AI development, but that's not what we're going to be talking about. In the same way Siri cannot interpret or express beauty, neither can human beings, especially when we try to define ourselves according to societal standards that have not been made with human beings in mind, or at least most of them. Oh, that's right. Today I'll be talking about that naughty, spicy societal beauty standards. Also, I don't know what accent that is. It just came out of me and I went with it, and I don't know who she was. But I'll be talking about this because we live in a society, but also because we generally do live in a society which doesn't define beauty or self-care in the healthy way that it probably should define them. What am I talking about? Well, since I spend every minute, every second, every waking hour on YouTube, which I probably shouldn't be doing, I end up consuming a whole lot of YouTube content, which also means I end up noticing a lot of YouTube trends. And one trend that I've been noticing in particular is quarantine glow-up videos. Hello, so I actually made this entire video last year when the pandemic had just started, and I think it was around June, July, because of my commentaries kind of relating to that time period, but I still think most of the advice and the things I said are highly applicable. So what's a glow up? A glow up is basically when you kind of like a Pokemon evolution where you go from one stage to another, and in the next stage you're just far more powerful, but more in terms of like aesthetic beauty, which I guess is quite a lot like Pokemon's actually. But during glow up you end up looking more like a baddie than you did before. You end up fitting societal beauty standards more than you did before. You end up looking good according to society, and it's all about transforming the way you look to fit in more according to the beauty standards of, that's right, society. A quarantine glow up is simply a bizarre expectation to have out of yourself. Mostly because we're living through troubling times, just like every single email I get from my school and work reminds me of, where not only do we have a global pandemic, we're having major climate change affecting people, recession happening, and just so many tragedies happening. How can we expect ourselves to suddenly care and have the pressure of trying to fit into societal beauty standards? Now you might be thinking, a quarantine glow up, that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. I've seen tons of creators do it in a healthy, enriching way, but I've also seen some creators who don't do it in an enriching way. They focus more on the way they look and force themselves to fit those, you know it, societal beauty standard, which is not necessarily the healthiest thing to do, especially now when people have tons more to worry about than just the way they look. I also remember coming across an article that described how we are currently coming into a particularly gnarly mental health crisis time. I don't know if gnarly is a good adjective to use there. We're entering a mental health crisis period just because of everything that's going on and the isolation and demotivation that a lot of people are facing, especially younger people, in the face of such troubling times. How can we expect ourselves to glow up the way we look or look our best or really focus on our physical appearance? That's such an unfair thing to expect out of yourself. Also, this is no hate to someone who just generally wants to change something about themselves physically and gets happiness from doing that and use a distraction from how dark and awful our world is right now. You know, you do you, homie. I'm not going to come between that. I'm just trying to say is that sometimes it can be unhealthy and we need to be aware of that. Also, that being said, today I will be doing a quarantine glow up. That's right, I'm a hypocrite. I promise this will be healthy, wealthy, and wise. I promise this will be healthy, this will be wealthy, and not toxic. And I will be focusing on enriching what's in here. That's right, my marine fluids. My neuroscience professors are going to hate me for saying that. My mental health, and also just overall my health and hygiene. Things that everyone should be working on regardless of whether or not you're trying to look the glow person that you want to be. But yes, we should be having a healthy, a happy, a non-toxic quarantine glow up. isn't it kind of weird that our skin that was literally made as another layer of protection for our organs and to keep everything inside and a-okay is used to determine so much about another human being? And I know that this can be argued that this is kind of how the entire animal kingdom works, which yes, it does. Maybe for a species that believes it's as evolved as we think we are, I feel like we put a lot of importance onto what we look physically, at least according to societal beauty standards. And I know the society beauty standards say that your skin has to be without pores, it has to have no acne, it needs to be even toned, and no such skin exists that is that perfect. Like, you might be lucky and just have a skin tone that doesn't have that much acne or has less imperfections. Having no pores and going for like a poreless look, it's basically impossible. Hello, me from present times again. And I think another interesting point that I've recently learned is actually the lines on our face. We might be developing them for more reasons than just as a show of our age or just because our skin is aging. And it's also because we tend, as human beings, based on these tests that they've done, they found out as human beings we tend to trust people with lines on their face more than we trust those with completely clear, immovable skin that kind of like Botox creates. Not taking people who have done Botox, but just like an interesting observation, and perhaps another reason why we shouldn't hate imperfections on our skin. And also, in addition to that, it is impossible for us to have completely clear, unblemished skin that is kind of sold online. Like, we're gonna have some imperfections, minor ones at the very most. And like, most of what we see online when people have that kind of skin is through filters or Photoshop. And video photoshopping is very, very real and does happen a lot on social media. Also, I think that when people have like smile lines, I really like that because that means that they have smiled and laughed so much in their lives, even when they have crow's feet next to their eyes. And I think that these like marks of aging show that they have lived such whole and long lives and gained so much experience during that. Like, when I start developing them, I'm gonna rock them 100%. So I think we should stop as a society being so like anti-aging as much as we are. Like, we should embrace it a little more. And I also read an article talking about how blackheads is a very recent fear that people have developed, and it just wasn't a thing that people were scared of 100 years ago, which technically a lot of our fears are more recent, and some fears have gone from 100 years, so I guess there's that to point out too. But that being said, it's weird how a lot of our fears we just think is normal to hate are things that have been taught us by marketers and companies and societal beauty standards. So today, to fix our skin in a healthy way, that doesn't include me hating on the acne that currently exists on my face, because adult acne is real, and whoever said acne goes away when you're an adult was scamming all of us, and whoever said that should be expected to be slapped by my legal team. And by my legal team, I literally just mean a strongly worded letter by me. I don't know how threatening that is. Today, the way we're going to be working on our skin in a healthy way is by exfoliating it. We're going to start this super slow by doing something really easy. We're going to do eyebrows. Now, I also thought it's super fascinating how much shaping your eyebrows can change the frame of your face and how you look. And I also think the shape and how you keep your eyebrows has a lot to do with how kept you look. Does that make sense? I feel like a lot of times when my eyebrows weren't perfectly in shape, I kind of felt like I was letting myself go, which is super ridiculous because letting yourself go is such a weird thing. Like, where are you letting yourself go? When were you letting yourself in? And what's wrong with letting our bodies return to their natural form? Like, hair is natural. It should be fine. We shouldn't be freaking out this much. That being said, I still am going to do my eyebrows because I just like the way they look when leak. But I'm trying to be okay with them existing as the way they are and not feeling like a weird sense of shame for my eyebrows not being kept. Because that's kind of whack. I should not be feeling ashamed for my eyebrows just being normal. Also, the way eyebrows go in and out of trend. Like, eyebrows, like really thick eyebrows are all the rage now. But like in the 90s, really thin eyebrows are really in. So people who had thick eyebrows used to, do their eyebrows until they were thin lines. And now it's like the complete opposite. People with thinner eyebrows are trying to like fill out their eyebrows so they look much larger, which is why we have things like the Instagram eyebrow look. And it's just fascinating to see how something that doesn't really seem as impactful as like eyebrows has such a huge impact on like our perceived beauties too. It's whack. Anyway, I also feel like whenever I do my eyebrows, I'm like, ooh, who is she? She suddenly looks so good. Also, speaking of letting ourselves go and like trying to fit into beauty standard, it's really interesting to see how media treats celebrities who either stop following the beauty standard or start to follow it a little more through like changes in their bodies. Like, for example, when Adele lost so much weight, people in the media were suddenly like, oh, she's so beautiful. And then people everywhere were like, oh, that glow up. And people were talking about it. And I was just like, I feel like Adele's always been very beautiful. And the size of her body shouldn't have anything to do with that. Additionally, I also think the way we look at old like actresses who age, like Jennifer Aniston, everyone's like, oh, she hasn't aged today. And I wish I looked like that when I'm her age. Or I saw some people saying to Alexa Demi too, because she's apparently like in her early 30s. Women don't suddenly get old when they turn 30. That's such a dumb idea. But also, why are we so afraid of getting old? And why are we like shaming people for naturally aging? Does that not feel weird? So I think the fact that like social media and just traditional media keep pushing that onto people, it's also making us think of ourselves like that. Like, oh, am I letting myself go because I'm not fitting this beauty standard? Or, oh, am I disgusting because I'm letting myself age naturally as I should? And I think it's important to personally try to step away from that to have a healthier perspective on yourself and your own body. I think it's so weird how we're oddly obsessed with body hair. And I'm saying this as someone who, for a long time in her life, had a huge insecurity with people seeing hair on her body, which is ridiculous because body hair is completely natural. It's something that wasn't even a source of shame until very, very recently. It wasn't until the early 1900s when razor and waxing companies started to target women too, since, from what I remember, because I was totally alive during that period of time, men went to war, so there was less people consuming shaving products, so then they started targeting women too. Plus more women entered the workforce and so had started earning enough money, and it would just make sense from a profitability perspective for them to target women too. And that's where the whole notion of skinless hair is beauty came from, which I think is interesting. I also don't know how widespread this is or if that was the initial start of it, because I've been to some like remote-ish areas which haven't been as impacted by certain standards of beauty just because they're so far away and in such secluded areas. But even there, the women shave just to feel beautiful. So I'm still unclear about where it comes from. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that something that's on our body to regulate temperature and act as another barrier from certain particles is a standard of beauty now. And it's such a huge source of shame. Like, I recognize that some of the reason why I hate having body hair is because of internalized patriarchal ideas, but I still can't help thinking that when I have body hair, I'm like, oh, I look ugly. But if I ever saw another girl, I would never think so. So that's definitely something I want to start working on. If I do have hair on my body, and because shaving has become a preference of mine, I make sure to be very clear not to shame myself for having hair and reminding myself that I want to shave, possibly because of something that I do not have control over and because of the way I've been raised by the world and society. So I'm very, very careful to not shame myself and to not get angry at myself if someone else sees body hair on me, because I used to get so pissed off at myself if there was like hair on me and I was outside and someone saw it and I was like, oh my god, I've ruined their day. And my body should not be in charge of whether someone's day is good or not. Also because I want to start loving myself in ways that does not cater to beauty standards. I want to be 70 years old, look in the mirror and be like, dang, who is that? She cute as fuck. Or oh my god, girl's looking fine, or I look great for a 7-year-old. I want to be 93 and love the way I look. I want to be 56 and think I am so beautiful just because I'm beautiful according to my own standard and not according to someone else's or society standard. And even society standards is so ridiculous because you can be the most attractive person and you can fit all of the Eurocentric standards of beauty and someone will still look at you and be like, wow, I don't think you're attractive. And if that isn't a clear depiction of how beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder, and therefore we should not even measure ourselves through beauty or the standards that make it, then I don't know what is. But I want to feel beautiful in a way that is empowering when I'm older, in a way that says I'm glad with the skin that I'm in, and not in a way that says I'm what society thinks is beautiful and therefore I'm validated by that and I am beautiful. That is not what I want to go by. Hello, present me again. And to add to this conversation, I do think that even the beauty standards we live with and the ones that I'm currently facing are like the Eurocentric, more American westernized ones. And even those beauty standards are very difficult to grasp in, not only because I physically can't fit into most of them because of certain parts of my face and my body, but also the fact that they change so much and it is physically impossible to keep up with them constantly while you have only one face, which is why we see so many celebrities doing so much plastic surgery every decade after they become popular, and it's just such an unattainable goal. Like, for example, one thing that the beauty standard has taught me to absolutely hate about myself is my nose. A larger nose. I have a higher nasal bridge with a bump on it. I hated the way it looked. I would like see pictures of myself where people would be like, oh, you look so great, but I'd only be able to see my nose, and I hated it so much. And this was more of a recent thing, and it developed after the whole tiny noses, like button noses, became the beauty standard, which I don't know, I feel like those have been beauty standard for a while, but I started to realize that that's the beauty standard. And I also saw that everyone who people consider to be beautiful are people with those kind of noses, and people got plastic surgery to have smaller noses. And for a while I was like, oh, should I get plastic surgery once I can afford it? And the answer to that is no, I'm not going to be doing that. I don't mean to hate people who get plastic surgery at all, because I understand that sometimes it also helps with confidence. It's a more complex issue that I can cover in this video. Personally, for me, I don't think it's a good idea for me to try to fit into a beauty standard that changes so fast and so rapidly. Like, sure, now my nose doesn't fit the beauty standard, but what about like 5 years from now, if suddenly the beauty standard changes so drastically and everyone's into bigger noses, bumps on them, and then I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't do that to my nose. And then maybe a few years from then, people are into a completely different nose shape. Because beauty standards evolve so much, I don't think it makes any sense for me to try to adhere and change my face into something that just changes way too rapidly for me to be able to ever consistently uphold it. And I'm also really afraid of, like, say, once I do plastic surgery, if I begin to find more and more minor things to change about my face until I'm like wholly unrecognizable to myself. Like, once I started, what if I can't stop? Again, this is no hate to people who do plastic surgery. This is just my personal opinion on doing it on myself. I've been trying to get myself to take more warm showers. I used to hate them because that meant I had to look at my own bare body, but now I'm learning to love them and experience them for what it is. I especially love it when I can turn the water really hot and then my skin turns red underneath the water. There's something exhilarating about that, and also something really exciting about feeling the burn and reminding myself that this is probably how it's going to feel once I finally descend into hell for all the sins I've committed. Sometimes when I'm taking a shower, I like to think about, what if I was the most beautiful woman in the world? And I don't mean this in a way of me aspiring to be that, but more in a hypothetical what if sense. And I think, what if I fit every standard of beauty? What if everyone looked at me and thought I was beautiful? And that would be terrifying. Because I feel like when you are so beautiful, it is incomprehensible, or when you're so beautiful that it becomes the number one thing about you that is valued, that's all you begin to value yourself for. And even besides that, I imagine that I would be incredibly insecure just because of the amount of scrutiny I would constantly be under. And the fact that even though I am so insanely, incomprehensibly beautiful, someone is still going to look at me and be like, no, she's not for me, just because beauty is such a subjective thing. I remember, it's maybe a weird example, but I remember in Percy Jackson, there's a scene where Percy goes and meets Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty and love. And he describes that to him, she looked like Annabeth, the girl he loves and his best friend at the time. And there was a section, I don't remember which in particular, but they describe Aphrodite as having an ever-changing face, and her face settles into what the person who's looking at her thinks is beautiful. And for Percy Jackson, that was the girl he loved, Annabeth Chase. And was such an interesting and great idea by Rick Riordan, but I'm also obsessed with him, so yeah. That was also such an interesting thing to add, because if the goddess of beauty doesn't have a fixed face, I think that truly does emphasize how incredibly subjective beauty is and how ridiculous it is that we value this concept that is so undefined so much. And so when I think about being the most beautiful woman on earth, it freaks me out, and I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not, because that would be terrifying. And also that explains why so many models are so insecure. Even though they're the pinnacle of societal beauty standards, they still aren't happy with themselves. And just because your physicality cannot be the only thing about you that is valued, and that beauty is so subjective. And I feel like when your skin is constantly under scrutiny, it develops a sense of fear about A, losing that to age, so that we all have to even have that worry, and B, it becomes something feel guarded about, that you are constantly scrutinizing to make sure that you're not underperforming in that aspect, or that you're not letting people down, or no one's going to think that you're ugly and that you have to look a certain way so that people think you're still beautiful. And that's absolutely ridiculous and sounds very terrifying, and I'm very glad that I am not the most beautiful woman in the world, and that nobody on earth is the most beautiful woman on the world, because that is a pressure that nobody should bear. So what's the takeaway from this section? It is, 1, we need to stop measuring ourselves with beauty in mind. And 2, if we are measuring ourselves with beauty in mind, and make it a term of empowerment rather than something that we feel like we need to aspire towards. So when we think of beautiful, let's think of beauty as the state at which I am the happiest with the way I look. And as long as we aspire towards that, I feel like that is way healthier than being like, I want to look a certain way, so I will change everything about myself and I will force myself to fit into that standard of beauty that literally wasn't made for most people. Growing up, I always had very curly hair and I never knew how to take care of it. For most of my life, I kind of looked like Hermione Granger in the first movie of Harry Potter. Not the one after that. She had like a serious hair glow up, which is really confusing because in the book she didn't. Anyway, everyone used to be like, wow, your hair is like a bush. And like people used to find me in crowds because of my hair. Because I would brush my hair, which is curly. And if you don't know, brushing curly hair is a big no-no. Anyway, since I do want to do something new with my hair, and I did already cut it short from what it was, I decided to color my hair. Oh my god, I really did that. But I wanted to do a color that wasn't too intense. Because while I do want it to be really bright and like something like purple or red, green, a fun color, I am applying for jobs and internships soon. People measure your capability at a job on your physical appearance. Who knows why? I don't know what having blue hair will say about my ability to design interfaces. That's why I'm just trying to go a few shades lighter, because I can't really get my hair darker since my hair is really dark brown, basically black. So I decided to go to a lighter brown. And I do recognize that a lot of glow-ups, they're always going for lighter hair colors, usually like a blondish tone. And I didn't want to necessarily stick with that, because I don't know why we all think when we say glow up, we associate especially with like lighter hair color. So I feel like most people's intentions aren't bad, but I just wanted to go a few shades lighter. I ended up messing up my hair, so now it looks like I have light brown hair growing on my roots naturally, and that I'd actually dyed my hair black, or it looks like I have sun damage, and it has not been done evenly. I don't know if I'm going to redo it because, hair damage. Also, throwback to the time that I tried to color my hair, but because I turned into Jared 19, I suddenly could not read the instructions. So where they said put in your hair dye, I accidentally put in the conditioning cream, therefore wasting the entire bottle of hair dye, and that entire pack cost me $8. I threw $8 into the drain, which means I could have had like 3 bobas with those $8. And I did. And honestly, I probably could have avoided the splotchy hair result if I just did a strand test, but I was very impatient and very afraid to turn into Jared 19 again, so I just did it. What's important is to surround yourself with positive things. Yes, I know this is one of those weird positivity talks. I understand. I also like watching, serial killer TV shows or thrillers. I love psychological thrillers, but I also understand that to uplift our mentality, we do kind of have to surround ourselves with things that are a little more positive. One way I try to work around this is that every time I watch something that is petrifying or might be a little disturbing, I try to equalize it by watching really, really happy things or things that make me laugh, at least before I go to bed. When we dream, our subconscious is kind of like going through our experiences and making memories from them. And a lot of times, if something is horrifying, that has made an impact on our brain. So while we're dreaming, we might have a nightmare based on that because our subconscious is like, whoa, this memory that we need to recycle so we remember. Also, by the way, what I'm talking about, it's a theory of why we dream. It is not a fact. It is all theoretical. I might be wrong. That being said, I do think it's important that we equalize the horror and gore and trauma in our lives with positive things. If you're reading something scary, maybe try reading something a little funner after, a little more positive. Or especially during a time like this when the world does not seem to be in line, instead of focusing and reading and consuming media that is really negative, let's try to consume media that is a little more positive and uplifts us so it doesn't feel like everything is crumbling around us and then we add on to that stressor or that sadness with another emotionally triggering thing. So please take breaks, do stuff that releases endorphins, take care of yourself. If you don't think you're worth taking care of yourself, remember, a stranger online who has no reason to tell you this because she only has 18 subscribers and that she isn't plugging a product thinks that you're worth it and you're worth the time and effort to experience a good state of mental health. So in this glow up, I try to focus on starting to exercise more in a more healthy way. I feel like for a long time in my life, and I know for a lot of people this is the same because of the conversations I've had with my friends, but I do know that a lot of people growing up, we think that we need to exercise because we need to lose weight. We need to fit the standard of how thin you need to be and how your frame needs to hold. And so in the 90s, it used to be, you need to be so skinny. What was called cocaine chic. And then in the 2010s, it was, you need to be curvy. You need to have an impossibly tiny waist, an incredibly large bust and butt. And those proportions are not natural and they don't happen in a healthy way. And I know for some people, their body types might be more inclined to display those proportions and go them, but it is unhealthy for people to aspire towards a body type that their body's physically incapable of ever becoming. And I know in history, women's body types have gone in and out of trends. In the Victorian times, being larger, being more plump was seen as beauty standard. If you were a skinnier person, they'd be like, oh, she's unhealthy, she's probably poor, no thank you. But if you were a larger, more robust woman, they'd be like, oh, that woman is beautiful. And it's so interesting because nowadays it's the complete opposite, which is ridiculous. Our body is something that we can't control naturally, should not go in and out of trends. This happens to women and this happens to men. Like, men are also forced to have six-pack abs to be very tall, otherwise women don't want to date them. And it's like, why are we doing this to ourselves? Our physicality say nothing about our personality. Like, come on. So here's another element that I think is far too complex for me to dive into in this video, but I think it's interesting to mention. So body neutrality, instead of being like, I should be beautiful and trying to look for different ways you can be beautiful and trying to find like beauty in your body, being more like, this is my body. Its main function is to make sure I exist and is to perform individual functions for my biological needs. And so I'm only going to be thinking about it from that perspective instead of being like, aesthetically, what does it look like? Because its job is not to be aesthetic, but is to sustain me and help me survive. So if you're not into the idea of beauty at all, or just find it incredibly constraining, I think it's much more healthier to focus on body neutrality rather than beauty. And being like, am I beautiful? It's more easy to be like, is my body sustaining itself? And then if the answer is yes, then you're good to go. I also want to note that it's not the healthiest thing to try to adhere by the beauty standard because there's so many more beauty standards all around the world, and trying to constantly come across as the most beautiful person in the world means that you might have to try to fit different beauty standards depending on your location, or that you might find that you don't actually fit someone's perspective of being beautiful because of the beauty standard of the place that they're from, or even perhaps their own individualized beauty standard and what they think is beautiful. well. So just because of the amount of diversity there is in our opinions and subjectivity that there is in this topic, I think it's very unhealthy to try to distinguish your level of attractionness through the eyes of other people. There's going to be some countries where the way you look now, you might not be considered attractive, while in other countries, you might be considered just the most attractive person. It is super dependent on your geographical location, the way the society is there, and the features that they value there. But even these things all across the globe are super susceptible to trends and changes, which is why we cannot simply measure our self-value based on the way we look and the beauty standard. I think that's one important thing to note, which is why body neutrality is such a great way to think about yourself. In addition to that, if you do want to think of yourself as beautiful, it's very important to not think of yourself as beautiful in terms of what a society will think of you, a country will think of you, or somebody else will think of you. And it's more important to just think you're beautiful as you are. But I know that this is in theory a great idea, but practically kind of hard to follow since our entire lives we're kind of taught to be beautiful. And this probably deserves an entire video on its own, but I just thought it was important to mention. So taking all those ideas in mind, what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to focus on toning my body and being healthy, because exercise helps get rid of so many toxins in our bodies and also helps combat anxiety, which I really need because of the release of endorphins. So those are the reasons why I exercise. And I don't exercise to become thinner. I don't exercise to become curvy. I don't exercise to grow butt. I just exercise so that when I'm older, I am fit and I don't have a lot of body issues. An element I did not talk about during this video, but I think is still important, is confidence. I think something that you should focus on during your glow up is the confidence to be able to do the things that you want to do, and not just confidence in the way you present yourself, which I also think is important. What I tried to focus on after I made that video was the confidence to do what I have always wanted to do. So it's like make YouTube videos, and currently is to write a book I've been wanting to write forever. So I'm focusing on that and focusing on being confident enough to do it, because I found that a lot of times when I don't feel confident, I end up talking myself out of doing these things because I'm like, I'm not good enough to do it, which imposter syndrome vibes, am I right? And so now I'm trying to like fake confidence to these things, or be like, no, you have to do it, and approach them with a more reassured sense of self. This takes a lot of time to do, years sometimes in my case. So I think that's one thing to also focus the glow up on, is more like an internal glow up, like our organs. No, it's the way we think and our mentality. And also I think because we do this, and when we build our confidence on doing the things we want to do, we're also going to be able to build how much we like ourselves, because we're actually doing what we want to do and we're enjoying it and we're able to develop it, which can help create a pathway for self-love. So, what is the takeaway of this video? Why did I just spend all this time telling you, someone who's absolutely not interested in the glow of a random stranger online, how to glow up in a healthy way, while also reviewing how absolutely ridiculous beauty standards are, and why it is so whack that we compare ourselves and measure ourselves according to the concept of beauty, which is so undefinable. Well, I think it's important that we talk about this and we focus on having a healthy, non-toxic glow up during a pandemic, just because of the fact that there's so much wrong going on in the world right now, and because of the news and because of the fact that we're all at home, at least I hope so, and we're all hyper aware of the state of the world right now, it is very hard to think positively or to take care of yourself. And I personally feel like telling people or having an expectation to glow up during the pandemic or to look better after the month of the pandemic is ridiculous, because it is not a good time. Why should you be focusing that much on your physical appearance and fitting into societal beauty standards? Right now, we just need to be making sure that we're okay, we're hygienic, we're healthy, and we're taking care of ourselves, and we don't need to have a pressure of trying to look really good. That last bit was definitely more reflective of the time I made this video in, but I still think everything I said in this video applies to today, and that we should still focus on everything I named earlier to be able to develop the best version of ourselves, or a more healthier version of ourselves, rather than just focusing on physical appearance and how we look physically to other people. So what beauty standard should I fit today? As the words in the thumbnail of this video ask, the answer is fit your own personal standard that asks for the highest version of yourselves, not in terms of presentation, but in terms of self-health, self-motivation, and self-growth. Right now, you matter, your mental health matters. And I know the world seems so hard right now, but I promise you that in the face of all of this, you matter, and the way you look does not matter that much. It's kind of weird that I have an entire YouTube video like this, and I don't even have a big platform to be like, hey, you're pretty, and everyone's like, oh my god, she said I'm pretty, so I guess I am. No, I don't have a platform to say that, but I feel like even if 1 or 2 people come across this video and watch till here and are like impacted by what I say and do begin to focus on themselves and their mental health, I'm going to be very happy with that. I feel like everyone needs to hear it more, that take care of yourself. Self-love is very important. Please focus on that right now. Also, an alternative takeaway from this video is, oh my god, why did she just make an incredibly long video about glowing up when she kind of also did focus on doing that in a roundabout way, and no one's going to watch it till here, so why is she doing this? And if no one's watching it, then who's wondering this? In conclusion, take care of yourself. Otherwise, I will come personally and I will yell at you. I will throw my slipper at you and I'll be like, hey, stranger, friend, take care of yourself or else I'm coming. That's right. Remember those chain mails? Forget about them. I'm going to come to your house at 12 a.m. at night and haunt you if you don't start loving yourself or if you don't start taking care of yourself. We are pressuring self-love in this household. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe for me. But my aim of this is not to force you to do anything. Please do if you'd like to encourage more videos like this. It would be very great. And if you do want to discuss the ridiculous beauty standards that we currently have, feel free to do so in my comments. I'd love to talk to you about it. Also, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And I will see you next Sunday. Have a very good day. Bye. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this video. Everything I said earlier applies once again. And I just wanted to thank everyone so much for clicking on my video out of everyone's video. And also for 71 subscribers, which, whoa, that is so many subscribers. Thank you so much for subscribing to me. I really hope you enjoy your time subscribing here and that you continue to like the quality of videos I upload. Thank you. Really appreciate the support.